It started with the sound of car doors slamming, 3 of them, one after another like a countdown I never asked for. The gravel in the driveway crunched beneath shoes that didn't belong here anymore. Through the curtain, I saw her first. Same posture, same walk, same laugh, but different eyes. She wasn't coming home. She was arriving. There's a difference. Coming home means you missed something. Arriving means you think you own it. I stayed behind the curtain a little longer than necessary, my fingers pressed into the fabric like it could hold me back from doing something stupid. Her family followed. Her sister, her mother, the same ones who stopped calling me when she left. Then came him, the reason she suddenly needed space, the reason my nights turned into questions. He walked behind her, relaxed, confident, one hand in his pocket, the other gripping her suitcase like it was his right. She didn't even knock. She just turned the handle and stepped inside. Her voice filled the hallway before the air could adjust to her presence. "We're back," she said, as if that word we didn't stab through me like a nail. The scent followed, her perfume mixed with travel dust and another man's cologne. My lungs burned with it. I stood there in the living room pretending to fix the frame of the old wedding photo that still hung above the mantel. My reflection in the glass looked older, harder. I didn't recognize the man staring back. I guess I shouldn't. She hadn't looked for him in a long time either. Her mother's voice came next, cheery and brittle. "You didn't clean up much, did you, David?" she said, scanning the shelves like a critic reviewing a play she already hated. I smiled, that polite, lifeless kind of smile that keeps the peace when the war's already begun. "I left it the way she liked it," I said. The words came out steady, calm, almost kind. Inside, something old and patient stirred awake. Then she appeared in the doorway, my wife, suitcase in hand, sunglasses pushed up into her hair. She didn't look at me right away. She just let her gaze sweep the room like she was checking if her kingdom was still intact. When her eyes finally found mine, she smiled. "Hi," she said, casual, like she hadn't torn our marriage apart in hotel rooms and phone calls I pretended not to hear. I nodded. "Welcome back." My voice sounded foreign, too even. Her eyes flickered, searching for the anger she expected but didn't find. I wasn't giving her that. Not yet. Her lover, I can't bring myself to say his name, lingered by the hallway mirror pretending to scroll through his phone. I could see his reflection smirking faintly. He thought he'd won. Maybe he had won for now. They started unpacking like they owned the air here. Her family chatted, moving from room to room, commenting on how nostalgic it felt, how quiet it must have been without her. I stayed near the window saying little, watching everything. Every touch they made on the furniture, every laugh, every memory they tried to resurrect. It was like watching strangers perform a play in a house they didn't understand. I poured tea for them, out of habit, not hospitality. My hands moved on their own, automatic, while my thoughts screamed behind my calm face. When I set her cup down in front of her, she didn't thank me. She just looked at the mug, the one that said Mrs. Carter's morning fuel, and smirked. "You still have this?" "Some things are hard to throw away," I said. Her eyes lingered on mine for a second too long. There was a flicker of guilt there, small but visible. Then her mother broke it. "Well," she said, "at least you didn't burn the place down while she was gone." I smiled. Not because it was funny. Because I would. Just not the way they expected. As the evening sank in, I excused myself and went upstairs. I needed space, or at least the illusion of it. From the window of our old bedroom, I could see them in the garden. Her hand rested on his shoulder as she laughed at something her father said. The same gesture she used to do to me. A small touch, casual, harmless, and until it isn't. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dent in the pillow she once cried into, the same one she now slept on without remorse. How does someone unlove you so easily? How do they come home with someone else and still expect you to greet them with warmth? The house was quieter upstairs. Too quiet. I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock in the hallway. Tick, tick, tick. Every sound was a memory I didn't want. I went to the closet and opened the safe where I kept the house papers. The deed, the mortgage receipts, all the signatures that made this place mine. My name, my work, my life. I ran my hand over the folder and smiled faintly. That's when the idea planted itself, quiet and sharp like a seed dropped in cold soil. They thought I was broken. They thought I'd just live around them, swallow my pride, serve their meals, watch them laugh in the home I built. But broken men don't stay broken. They rebuild. Just not always in the way you expect. Later that night, as they laughed downstairs, I came back to the top of the stairs and watched her move around the kitchen. Barefoot, comfortable, humming. Like she'd never left. My blood hummed too, low and steady. She caught me watching and froze for a heartbeat. "You're quiet," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm just taking it in," I replied. "What?" she asked, half smiling. "The view," I said. She didn't understand, and I didn't explain. When they went to bed, I sat in the dark, the house breathing softly around me. The old refrigerator hummed. The floor creaked. The rain started again, light, constant, forgiving. I looked at my reflection in the window and whispered, "You came back to your house, didn't you?" The reflection smiled, small, sharp, patient. "Let's see if it's still yours." The next morning began with sunlight that didn't feel warm. It crawled across the floorboards like something foreign, invading, reminding me that the house no longer belonged to silence. I could hear her downstairs, her voice floating through the hallway, lighter now, almost cheerful. That tone she used when she wanted to pretend everything was fine. I stayed upstairs for a while, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the dent in the old mattress. Her perfume lingered there, not the soft lavender she used to wear, but something new. Stronger, more expensive. I could smell him in it too. The thought crawled under my skin like an itch I couldn't scratch. When I finally went downstairs, the house was full. Her family had settled in like squatters in a memory. Her mother had taken over the kitchen, frying eggs and humming hymns she used to sing during Sunday visits. Her sister was at the table scrolling through her phone, the lover by the window pretending to admire the garden that I planted. I watched them all, each movement choreographed by comfort and arrogance. "Morning," my wife said without turning around. She was making coffee, her favorite blend, using my old mug. She didn't even ask. She poured it slowly as if marking territory. "We're thinking of staying a few weeks," she added, her voice calm, casual, like she was talking about the weather. "A few weeks." The words landed like a match in dry grass. I smiled faintly. "Of course. You should feel at home." The lover turned, smirking. "You sure about that, man?" His tone carried the arrogance of someone who thinks he's already replaced you. I looked at him for a moment. Not long, not angry. Just enough for him to understand that I wasn't broken. "I built this house," I said quietly, sipping my tea. "It's held worse storms." He chuckled, but the laugh faltered. He didn't answer, she noticed. "Please, David," she said, rolling her eyes. "Don't start with the poetic stuff. We're all trying to move forward." Move forward. As if betrayal was something you could walk away from like spilled milk. I wanted to say that moving forward usually requires leaving the past behind, not bringing it back with luggage and a lover. But I didn't. I just smiled. When they went out that afternoon, her and him, I stayed behind. Her parents were napping in the guest room, the house finally quiet again. I walked through each room like a ghost inspecting the living. The couch they sat on was the same one where she once curled beside me during winter storms. The wall still carried a faint outline where our wedding photo used to hang before she took it down. In the corner, her old plant, dead, brittle, still standing. I sat in her chair and looked out the window. My mind replayed every word she'd said that morning, every laugh she'd shared with him. It wasn't the cheating that burned. I'd already mourned that long ago. It was the audacity. The way she could walk back into the life she broke, wearing a smile like nothing ever happened. That's when I realized something. People like her don't feel guilt until the ground disappears beneath them. So I decided to take away her ground, not through shouting, not through fists, but through paperwork, the kind that doesn't make noise until it's too late. That evening when they came back, I acted normal. I laughed at her father's bad jokes, poured wine for everyone, even complimented the meal her mother made. I was calm, collected. They thought I was healing. But inside I was laying bricks, quiet, invisible ones, building my escape, my revenge, my peace. After dinner, I walked into the office, my sanctuary, and opened the drawer with the old documents. The papers felt heavier than before. I ran my hand across the title deed, tracing my name with my finger. I thought about how many times she'd told me this house was ours. Ours. What a word. Shared ownership until the first storm. Downstairs, I heard them laughing again. Their laughter echoed through the vents, bouncing off every corner that used to belong to love. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, and whispered, "You're laughing now. Let's see how long it lasts." That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house barefoot, feeling every creak, every shift of old wood. The rain outside tapped against the windows like fingers counting down. In the kitchen, the dim light from the fridge spilled across the floor. I stood there looking at the empty shelves, at the mug she used and left in the sink. Her lipstick marked the rim, crimson and careless. I picked it up and held it for a long moment. Then I set it aside gently, almost reverently, and whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." Her footsteps echoed from upstairs. She was awake. For a second I thought she'd come down, but she didn't. The floorboards creaked, then fell silent again. I stayed there until the clock struck midnight. The tick-tock sound pulsed through the air like a heartbeat I no longer shared. That's when it hit me. I wasn't going to shout or beg or reason. That's what weak men do. I'd been weak once. No more. I walked back to the office, opened the drawer, and took out a small notebook. I began to write. Not a plan, not yet. Just thoughts. Lines. Fragments. Each word felt like a match being struck in the dark. She brought him here. She thinks I'll forgive her. She doesn't understand what silence can do. I closed the book, feeling lighter. The plan wasn't finished, but the foundation was set. The rain grew louder outside, washing the night clean. I stood by the window and looked out at the streetlights glimmering through the downpour. Somewhere behind one of those windows, someone was probably sleeping beside the person they trusted. I envied them. But envy fades. Resolve doesn't. As the clock hit 1, I whispered into the dark, "Tomorrow I start rebuilding. But not for us. For me." And that's when I smiled for the first time in weeks. The kind of smile that doesn't come from happiness, but from clarity. Morning came slow and heavy, dragging its light across the walls like a reluctant apology. The smell of coffee seeped under the door before I opened my eyes. For a few seconds, I forgot everything. The sunlight, the warmth, the faint hum of life downstairs, and it all felt normal. But then I heard his laugh. Deep, careless, too comfortable. And just like that, the illusion shattered. I got up, washed my face, and stared into the mirror. The man looking back at me didn't blink for a while. My eyes had changed, darker, still calculating. Not angry, not yet. Anger is for amateurs. I needed patience. When I came down, they were already eating breakfast. The kind of loud, joyful meal that used to fill this kitchen before everything turned to ash. She sat across from him, smiling like a stranger. Her sister was showing photos from their trip on her phone. Beaches, dinners, candlelight. I noticed how close they sat in every picture. My stomach tightened, but my face didn't move. Her father looked up at me. "Morning, son," he said, using that word like he was daring me to correct him. "Morning," I replied. My tone was polite, almost gentle. She glanced at me then, only for a second, and in that glance I saw something. Not guilt, not shame, just awareness. The kind you get when you realize someone has stopped caring whether you notice them. "Coffee?" she asked. I nodded. "Please." She poured it, handed it over, and our fingers brushed. Once that would have meant something. Now it just reminded me how cold she'd become. The kind of cold that doesn't melt. It erases. They talked for a while. Plans, errands, laughter. I tuned it all out, focusing instead on the ticking clock above the fridge. Tick, tick, tick. The sound felt louder now, counting down toward something only I could hear. When they finally left for the afternoon, another quick outing, I watched from the window as they drove away. Her hand rested on his knee in the passenger seat, and that tiny gesture nearly split me in two. But instead of breaking, I turned away and smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I went straight to the study and opened my drawer again. The house deed lay there, patient, untouched. I traced the embossed letters of my name like a prayer. My house, my name, my right. The phone buzzed beside me. A message from an old friend, Mark, a real estate agent I'd helped years ago when he was struggling. I hadn't spoken to him in months. It felt like timing wasn't coincidence anymore. "Still in the same place," his message read. "Yeah," I replied. "Thinking about selling," he called within seconds. "David didn't think I'd hear that from you. You love that house." I looked around the room, the walls echoing with ghosts that no longer loved me back. Not anymore, I said. We spoke for a while. I told him I wanted privacy, no public listings, quick cash sale. He understood.
I can handle it quietly, he said.
No signs, no buzz. Just tell me when. Soon, I said. That night the house was louder than usual. They returned late, drunk on laughter and wine. I could hear their voices upstairs, her giggle mixing with his whispers. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the faint reflection of their shadows on the ceiling. Two silhouettes moving where she and I once shared silence. My tea had gone cold, untouched. My hands were steady now, completely still. There's a point where pain stops trembling and turns into something sharper. Purpose. I was there. Her mother came downstairs once, half asleep, surprised to find me sitting there. You should get some rest, she said softly, her voice holding something between pity and fear. I'm resting, I said. She hesitated, then nodded, backing away slowly. Maybe she saw it in my eyes, that quiet, frightening calm. The kind of calm that always means something's about to happen. When the house finally fell silent again, I stood up and walked to the door. Outside, the night smelled like wet soil and betrayal. The porch light flickered once like it was warning me. I ignored it. I walked to the edge of the yard where the roses she used to love still grew, wild and untrimmed. I knelt down and touched the soil. My hands came up dirty, but I didn't wipe them clean. Some stains aren't meant to go away, I whispered. You built your lies here. Now I'll bury them here too. A dog barked in the distance, a low rumble of thunder rolling behind it. I turned back toward the house, the windows glowing faintly with the life that no longer included me. For a second, I wondered if I was the villain in her story, the bitter man who couldn't let go. But then I remembered what she'd done, the way she'd laughed when she left, the way she'd come back without remorse. Villains don't build homes. They just stop pretending to be saints. I went inside and locked the door. The key turned smoother than it ever had. I took that as a sign. As I climbed the stairs, I passed the family photo wall. Our faces smiled down at me from happier times. Her eyes, bright, full of trust, seemed to follow me. I almost stopped. Almost, but forgiveness is a trick memory plays when it's tired. I wasn't tired anymore. I was awake. I reached our bedroom door and stood there for a long moment listening. Her breathing mixed with his, soft, steady content. I didn't move. Didn't make a sound. I just watched the door handle, motionless as if I could open it with thought alone. Then I turned and walked away. I went downstairs again, back to my chair, back to my plan. Tomorrow I'd call Mark again. Tomorrow the papers would move. And soon, very soon, the house she thought she'd reclaimed would be gone. I poured myself another cup of tea. The rain outside had stopped, but the smell of wet earth drifted through the cracked window. I stared at the surface of the tea, dark and still, and whispered to myself, she came home to win. I took a sip, but I never stopped playing. The clock ticked louder, slower, heavier, like it knew what was coming. They say revenge begins with a scream, but mine began with silence, the kind that seeps into walls, settles into corners, and watches. I didn't need to shout. I'd already done that in my head 1,000 times. What I needed now was patience. A week had passed since her return. The house had adjusted to her presence again, but in a warped, unnatural way. Her laughter echoed through the halls like something rehearsed, not real. Her lover's shoes sat neatly by the front door, the same spot where I used to leave mine. Every detail mocked me. Every sound reminded me that I was living among ghosts, still pretending to be alive. I played my role perfectly. I became invisible. I was the quiet caretaker, the man too broken to fight. I fixed things that didn't need fixing. The doorknob she never noticed, the leaky faucet she'd ignored for years. I cooked breakfast before they woke up, cleaned the dishes before anyone could thank me. They thought I was surrendering. They mistook quiet for weakness, but silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. Each morning I watched her, how she smiled into her phone, how she left the room to take certain calls, how her tone shifted from sweet to secretive. One afternoon I heard his voice from the speaker, not the one she brought home, but another man. I'll handle the payment next week, he said. Her voice lowered. Just make sure he doesn't find out. My pulse slowed. Payment for what? That night, after everyone went to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table, piecing it together. Bills, lies, hidden calls. Something was rotting under her polished words. The next morning, she left for errands. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner. Then I started searching, not wildly and deliberately. Years of marriage had taught me her habits, where she hid what mattered, what drawers she trusted. In the second drawer of her desk, beneath a stack of old letters, I found it, a property transfer agreement. Her handwriting was there, my name crossed out, hers bold and perfect. She'd been planning to sell the house, my house, to cover someone else's debt. I could see the edges of her lies bleeding through the ink. For a long moment, I just sat there staring at the document, the way one might stare at an open grave. Then I laughed, quietly, bitterly, because betrayal always feels absurd when you finally see it on paper. The irony was almost poetic. She wanted to sell the house out from under me, but the deed was still in my name. Still my legal right, still my weapon. I leaned back in her chair, the one I'd built myself years ago. My fingers traced the carved initials along its side, D&L 2008. Back then I'd carved it for her birthday, back when love still felt like a promise instead of a trap. The house was silent except for the low hum of the fridge and the rain pressing softly against the window. I whispered, "You should have left the papers where they belonged and with me." That evening I acted like nothing had changed. I asked if she wanted dinner together. She didn't even look up from her phone. "I'm busy," she said. The words were light, casual, but they hit like bullets. "Of course," I replied. "You've got a lot going on lately." Her eyes flicked up for a moment, suspicious, then softened. "Just trying to get everything back on track," I smiled. "I'm sure you will." She didn't hear the edge in my tone. She'd stopped listening years ago. Later that night, as I stood outside her bedroom door, I heard her speaking softly on the phone again. "He has no idea," she whispered. "It'll be over soon." I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. She was right about one thing. It would be over soon. The next morning she left early. I waited until I heard the car pull out of the driveway. Then I walked to my desk, picked up the phone, and dialed Mark's number. He answered on the second ring. "You ready?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Make it private. No listings, no signs. Just one buyer, cash only." "Understood," he said. "You sure about this?" I looked around the house, on the walls, the framed memories, the ghost of who we used to be. "I've never been more sure of anything." He hesitated. "And your wife?" "She doesn't need to know." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the window. For the first time in years, I didn't see a broken man. I saw control. Over the next few days, I kept my routine. I smiled when they smiled. I helped with dinner, asked about their plans, even laughed at their jokes. I was invisible again, but now I was the one watching. Every move they made, every whisper, every lie, I collected it like currency. On the fifth day, Mark called back. "I found a buyer," he said. "Private investor. Pays in full. Doesn't ask questions. When can we close?" Friday. That gave me 2 days. 2 days to hold my silence. 2 days to play the perfect husband, the perfect fool. That evening, as she laughed on the phone again, I walked out onto the porch. The night was warm, heavy with the scent of rain-soaked grass. The wind rustled the trees like whispers conspiring. I closed my eyes and listened to it. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Inside, I heard her voice again. Sharp, careless, talking about moving forward. I whispered into the dark. "You'll move forward all right. Just not where you think." When I turned around, I saw her silhouette in the doorway, half-shadowed, curious. "Who are you talking to?" she asked. My smile was slow, deliberate. "Just myself," she frowned. "You've been acting strange lately." "Have I?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "You're just..." "Quiet," I nodded. "Quiet doesn't always mean calm." She gave a confused laugh and went back inside. The door clicked shut behind her. I stayed there a while longer, listening to the hum of the night, the house breathing around me like it already knew what was coming. When I finally went to bed, I didn't dream. I didn't need to. The future was already written, in ink she never bothered to read. Friday was coming, and with it, the end of everything she thought she controlled. Friday came with sunlight that lied. It spilled through the curtains like forgiveness, soft and golden, pretending the world was still kind. But under that glow, the house was tense. I could feel it, the quiet before a storm that no one else could hear. I woke early, showered, shaved, even wore a clean shirt. I looked normal, almost peaceful, the kind of peace that only comes when you've already decided what must be done. I made coffee, set the kettle back, and watched the steam rise. It reminded me of breath, warm, fleeting, gone too soon. Upstairs, I heard movement. Her footsteps. The sound used to make my heart quicken. Now it only reminded me how far we'd fallen. She came down dressed neatly, face glowing with that same fake calm she wore whenever she was lying. "Morning," she said, reaching past me for a mug. "Morning," I replied. My tone was even, my smile faint. She poured herself coffee, leaned against the counter, and started scrolling through her phone. "You're up early." "Big day," I said. She didn't ask what I meant. She never did anymore. Her mother entered the kitchen, chatting about groceries, weather, small talk, anything that filled silence. I nodded at all the right moments, smiled when expected, but my mind was already elsewhere. On the papers. The signatures. The final stroke of the pen that would close the book on us forever. At exactly 10, I excused myself. "Just have to run a quick errand," I said. She barely looked up. "Don't be long." "We're having dinner tonight." Dinner. The audacity of normalcy. "I won't," I said, though both of us knew I wouldn't be there. The drive to Mark's office was short but endless. The kind of drive where every red light feels like a test of will. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel, not from nerves, but from anticipation. I'd spent weeks drowning in silence. Now it was time to let it echo. Mark met me at the door, folder in hand. "You're early," he said. "I've been waiting a long time." He smiled, though there was hesitation in his eyes. "Everything's ready." Buyer's funds cleared. "You sign and it's done." I followed him inside. The smell of fresh paper and cheap coffee filled the air. He laid the documents on the desk, thick, crisp, final. The contract looked harmless, almost delicate. But I knew better. This wasn't paperwork. It was retribution written in legal ink. My name gleamed faintly beside the signature line. I picked up the pen. "You sure?" Mark asked again. I nodded. I'm done living in her shadow. The pen slid across the page smoothly, the sound like a whisper against the silence. With every stroke, I felt something leave me. Guilt, grief, attachment. By the time I reached the last line, I wasn't just signing papers. I was erasing her claim to everything she thought she owned. When it was over, Mark extended his hand. "You okay?" I exhaled. "Better than I've been in years." He nodded slowly. "You know, this kind of thing doesn't fix everything, right?" "It doesn't have to," I said. "It just balances the scale." I left with a copy of the sale receipt tucked neatly in my jacket. The folder felt lighter than I expected, almost weightless. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of rain, though the sky was still bright. I stood there for a moment, staring at the horizon. For the first time, it didn't feel like it was running away from me. I drove home slowly, the world passing in soft blurs. The trees along the road waved like old friends saying goodbye. Every mile was a memory. The day we bought the house, the night we painted the walls, the time she laughed so hard she dropped a whole can of white paint on the floor. It had taken a lifetime to build that world. It took a single signature to end it. When I pulled into the driveway, their car was gone. Perfect. The house stood still, watching me. I walked inside, placed the folder on the table, and took a deep breath. The air smelled different now, cleaner, lighter. Ownership had shifted, but peace was still unpacking its boxes. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in her chair, the same one she used when she'd lecture me about letting go. I took a sip, leaned back, and waited. The ticking clock felt slower now, deliberate, like the house was holding its breath with me. At 6, I heard the door. They were back. Laughter, footsteps, the sound of keys on the counter. "I didn't move, David," she called. "In here," I said. She entered the room, still glowing from the day, sunglasses perched in her hair. "You didn't come with us." "I had something to finish," she smiled faintly. "What's that?" I looked at her, really looked. The woman I married was buried under layers of pride and lies. I could still see traces of who she was, but they were faint ghosts now. "You'll see," I said, my tone steady. She tilted her head, confused, then shrugged. "Dinner's almost ready." "You should join us," I nodded. "I will. Just give me a moment." As she turned to leave, I let my fingers brush the edge of the folder. The truth sat there, waiting like a loaded chamber. When the first drops hit the window, I knew timing had chosen me. I called out, "Hey!" She turned. "What? Do you know what today is?" She frowned. "Friday." "More than that." I smiled slowly, almost kindly. "It's the day you stopped owning this house." Her confusion cracked, replaced by something raw. "What are you talking about?" I slid the receipt across the table. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the glass like applause. Her eyes darted over the page once, twice, then froze. You sold it?" I didn't blink. "Cash deal. Closed this morning." Her voice broke into a laugh, sharp, nervous, disbelieving. "You're lying." "Check the signature," I said. She did. And then the color drained from her face. Her hands trembled. "Why?" she whispered. I leaned forward, voice quiet but sharp. "You screamed, 'Pay the rent or get out,' so I did both." For a moment, she didn't move. Just stood there, holding the paper like it burned. Behind her, her mother appeared, confused. "What's going on?" She didn't answer. She just looked at me, eyes wet but hard. "You ruined us," she said. I smiled faintly. "No, you just finally got what you asked for." Her lover came into view, his tone defensive. "You can't just sell—" I turned to him, cutting him off with a look. "It was never yours to begin with." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the air between us. Outside, the rain roared. Inside, nothing moved. Not even the clock, and then quietly she said it, the line that would haunt me long after. "You've become someone else." I stood, adjusting my jacket. "No," I said. "I just stopped being yours." I left the room without another word, the echoes of their disbelief following me like ghosts. The tea on the table had gone cold, untouched. But me, I was burning. Her voice followed me down the hallway, sharp, breaking, desperate. "David, you can't just walk away from this." But I already had. The house that once hummed with love now vibrated with chaos. Her mother's voice joined the storm, demanding explanations. Her lover threw questions that didn't deserve answers. Through it all, I stayed calm. That was the part they couldn't stand, my quiet. It frightened them more than shouting ever could. I stopped near the staircase, fingers grazing the old banister I'd sanded myself years ago. Every notch, every scratch held a memory. The night we carried furniture upstairs. The time our daughter— No, stop, and I caught myself. She wasn't here. She'd chosen her mother's version of the story months ago. Another ghost in the collection. I turned back to face them. She stood at the edge of the living room, still clutching the receipt, her eyes wild and wet. "Why would you do this?" she said again, her voice trembling. I took a slow breath. "Because you stopped loving this place. You treated it like a cage. I just—" Opened the door, her jaw clenched. "You think this makes you the hero?" "I don't believe in heroes anymore," I said softly. "Just endings." Her lover stepped forward, puffing his chest. "If this is some twisted way to get back at her, you're pathetic, man." I smiled. Not cruelly, just knowingly. "You think this is about you?" I asked. "You're not even a chapter." "You're a footnote," he stiffened. She grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Stop," she said. Her voice cracked, half fury, half fear. I could have kept going. Could have thrown every betrayal in her face. Every night I spent waiting for a call that never came. Every lie she told with that same calm tone. But no, the truth didn't need words anymore. It was sitting right there in her hands, signed, sealed, irreversible. I turned toward the door. My coat hung by the frame, still damp from the morning rain. I put it on slowly, button by button. My movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic. Each one felt like closing another part of my life behind me. She moved closer, the paper trembling in her grasp. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered, "didn't I?" I said, turning halfway. "You made this house a place I couldn't breathe in. You brought him here. You brought your lies here. You made me a stranger in my own walls." Her lips trembled, but no words came. Her eyes glistened, full of the kind of tears that arrived too late to matter. Her mother spoke from behind her. "Where will you go?" I smiled faintly. "Anywhere quiet," her lover snorted. "You think running fixes anything?" I looked at him one last time. "No, but staying would kill me." Pause. Rain softens, faint thunder in distance. She stepped forward, blocking the door. "David, please. We can talk about this." "We can talk?" I cut her off. "When did we last talk, really? Not argue, not accuse, just talk." You stopped listening long before I stopped speaking. Her breath hitched. The truth always does that when it's finally said aloud. I reached for the door handle, but she grabbed my wrist. Her hand was shaking. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I looked down at her fingers, once gentle, now desperate. For a second, a memory flashed. Her hand holding mine at our wedding, our fingers laced together, trembling with hope. That memory used to be gold. Now it was rust. I pulled my hand free. You did, I said quietly. You just thought I'd never fight back. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Not of me, but of losing control. The realization that she wasn't the one writing the story anymore. I opened the door. The cold air hit my face like freedom. Behind me, the living room stood frozen. Her mother's stunned silence, his anger, her disbelief. All of it blurred into background noise. David, she called again. If you walk out that door, there's no coming back. I paused at the threshold. That's the point. I stepped out into the rain, the sound of it swallowing everything behind me. The sky was gray, heavy, beautiful in its honesty. It didn't pretend to be anything else. For a long moment, I just stood there, letting it soak through my clothes. Each drop felt like a baptism, washing away what was left of the man she'd broken. I looked back once through the open doorway. She was still standing there, shaking, holding the papers like they might undo themselves. Her lover hovered behind her, powerless. The house, our house, stood between us, empty, hollow, done pretending to be a home. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy, not healed, just unchained. I walked down the steps, gravel crunching under my boots, the air tasting of wet earth and endings. By the time I reached the gate, I heard her voice again, smaller now, almost pleading. Where will you go? I didn't turn around because I already had somewhere in mind. The rain didn't stop that night. It followed me like a witness, quiet, constant, unblinking. Roads gleamed under the streetlights, stretching ahead like thin veins of silver. I didn't know exactly where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. The house was no longer mine, not in spirit, not in memory, not even in name. By morning, the rain had thinned to mist. I parked at a rest stop, the kind where no one looks at you for too long. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the windshield. I looked like someone I barely recognized, calm, deliberate, emptied. Maybe that was the price of revenge. You don't win, you just stop bleeding. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls. Her name on the screen. No messages. No apologies. Just the silence of someone who finally understood what they'd lost. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear her voice again. Not the woman who screamed, pay the rent or get out in my own kitchen. I started the car again. The sound of the engine felt louder than usual, like the world was reminding me I still existed. I drove toward the edge of town where the air smelled of pine and wet soil, where life moved slower. I found a small motel, yellowed walls, flickering neon sign, vacancy half-lit. I checked in under my middle name. No one asked questions. I liked that. The room smelled faintly of dust and old soap. The curtains were heavy, the bed stiff. But it was quiet. No footsteps upstairs, no slammed doors, no ghosts whispering through walls. Just me and my thoughts. That first night away, I dreamt of her. Not the woman she became, but the girl who used to dance barefoot in our first house, laughing as paint dripped down her arms. She'd said, "We're building something that'll last forever." I remember nodding, believing her. Funny how forever can expire without warning. I woke before dawn. The world outside was gray-blue, washed clean. I made instant coffee, sat by the window, and watched the fog roll over the trees. The calm should have felt like peace, but it didn't. It felt like aftermath. Too quiet, too still, like the silence after a bomb stops echoing. By noon, Mark called. His voice was cheerful, oblivious. "Congratulations again, David. Everything went smoothly. Funds cleared. Transfer closed. You're free. Free. Such a small word for something so heavy." "Thank you," I said. My tone was flat, unreadable even to me. He hesitated. "You're not celebrating?" "Not my kind of thing," I said. "Freedom's not a party. It's a realization." He laughed awkwardly, muttered something about paperwork, and hung up. I sat there staring at the phone, then slowly opened my email. The confirmation sat there, black text on white screen. Transfer complete. The house was gone. Legally, financially, emotionally. She couldn't undo it now, no matter how many tears she shed. For the next few days, I drifted between half-sleep and thought. I walked into town sometimes, bought coffee, watched people talk like their world wasn't crumbling. I envied them, the simplicity of not knowing loss like mine, the kind that sits in your chest heavy and invisible.